Welcome back. We're talking with Ray McGovern, 27-year veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency. Ray, let's talk about Snowden's passport. We were just getting into that topic before we had to go to the break. If Snowden's passport is reinstated, what stops the administration from arresting him as soon as he steps on American soil? Will he even return to American soil?
Well, he would be foolish if he did. With this bloodlust exhibited, as I explained before, by the head of the House Intelligence Committee, the the Senate Intelligence Committee, and people running around like Mike Hayden, former head of the NSA and the former head of CIA, who was head of NSA when Dick Cheney said, General Hayden, you know that first commandment over there at the National Security Agency? Forget about it. First commandment, quote, thou shalt not eavesdrop on Americans without a court warrant, period, end quote. Forget about it. We got new instructions for you. We're going to start now. The month was February 2001, well before 9/11. Now, not after 9/11, went on steroids, of course, but it's General Hayden, CNN's commentator on all these, their unbiased commentator on all these things, that is being interviewed defending what people want to do to Ed Snowden. You know, it would be funny if it weren't so tragic.
Ray, I want to jump over to the revelations by Snowden that the NSA was spying on world leaders. President Obama said he didn't know anything about it. Do you believe that President Obama is telling the truth when he says that, or is the NSA so compartmentalized that he is telling the truth?
Well, first, Gary, I want to draw a very firm distinction between what NSA is doing in this country against the Constitution and what it's doing abroad, where its legalities or its authorities are much more open to question. Now, I'm an intelligence officer, okay? I know that intercepted communications helped us, for example, helped us to be able to tell Ronald Reagan, look, Mr. President, if the Soviets violate this arms control agreement, we're going to be able to tell you within a week. 7 days tops, that's all they'll have. And so trust but verify, well, that was our job, the verify part of it. I've seen intercepted communications stop wars, literally. That's heady stuff. So I'm not going to say we shouldn't be intercepting communications abroad. But, you know, I question the wisdom of eavesdropping on the Handy. That's what the Germans call it, das Handy from Angela Merkel, okay? Now, it's in the NSA documents that they didn't get anything out of that of intelligence value, you know, just what she drank with her sauerbraten on Sunday afternoon. And so why did they keep doing it? Why didn't somebody say, well, you know, what's the blowback? If somebody finds out about this, you know, what's the risk assessment here? Profit against risk.
So basically, if we're in a heated war situation, tensions are high between countries, then the spying on the world leaders, in essence, provides a national security function. But if we're not and we're spying, if we're not at war and we're simply spying on our allies, learning about what they had for breakfast, this is simply a waste of resources?
Well, Gary, you know, it's the technology driving this. Even John Kerry has said, you know, what's it, on autopilot. You have the technology that allows you to collect it all. Okay, sweep it all up, you know, vacuum clean it, or, you know, get it all up, and then collect it and put it in a retrievable form. That's why they're building this monstrous warehouse out there in Utah. So you can sweep it all up. But, you know, somebody needs to say, well, shouldn't we be assessing potential risk against these operations? Shouldn't there be some adult supervision to come in and say, well, now, you know, we used to talk about virtue being in the middle. The Greeks said nothing in excess. The Romans said in medio res, virtue is in the. Do we really need to collect everything just because we can? Well, we're seeing the repercussions of the lack of adult supervision.
So what are the repercussions? What is the blowback from these revelations and the carpet sweeping up of all this information globally?
Well, you know, I lived in Germany for 5 years, okay? Now, the Germans were always super discreet in anything they said about the United States president. Okay? Now, the most respected journal, newspaper, broadsheet in in Germany, and indeed in Europe, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, South German newspaper, it had, last week, it had 12 articles on this issue, one of which asked, Ist der amerikanische Präsident verrückt? Is the American president, well, it's worse than crazy. It's sort of deranged. If you do this to a German on the Autobahn, this means verrückt. Guess what? You can be fined for that. You can be put in jail for that. That's
what is that? What is that term? What you're doing there? I mean, it looks like you're holding a gun to someone's head.
No. What I'm trying to do is show you here that when people do this, that means your brain is deranged.
I see.
It's the worst thing it's all the really foul words you can use in English. Okay.
So the biggest newspaper in Germany ran a headline asking if the United States president is deranged.
It's full of, yeah, and German speakers will know what that means. You can't translate it into English. Another part of the article talked about this General Alexander. Him saying that there were 54 terrorist operations that were thwarted by NSA scooping all this information up. He goes before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Pat Leahy says, "Well, now, 54. How many of those had to do with the United States? Oh, maybe 13." And how many actually were thwarted? One. Okay. Well, John Alexander is portrayed in this German article as being ganz schön dumm. Okay. Now, literally, that means completely, beautifully dumb. But what it really means is dumb as a thumbtack. It's really just really dumb. How does he think he's going to get away with lying like that? Well, so far he has. He's still in place, and so is his ostensible supervisor, James Clapper, who lied before Congress when he was asked, is the National Security Agency collecting any data at all on American citizens, on millions or hundreds of millions of American citizens? Clapper, no, sir. 2 months later, he apologized to Congress. So I don't know why I said that. It was, quote, clearly erroneous, end quote. And then he tells one of these commentators, well, I said the least untruthful thing. That guy is still head of national intelligence.
Well, so let me ask you this. You mentioned parental supervision. Where's the accountability for these individuals when they lie to Congress and then they come out and they openly admit to lying using not the exact terminology or stating they lie, they're using word games. Where is the accountability?
Well, we don't say lie, of course, here in Washington. We say prevarication or speaking untruths. So there is no accountability. And that's what bothers me. And that's what I've been telling the Europeans who are very interested in this thing. I'm getting more interviews from Europe than around here. What we have here is...
Red, I do want to ask you about the CNN interview we talked about during the break. So we'll get to that in a second, but please continue.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that, you have a situation this morning. Big headline in the New York Times. CIA has been paying AT&T $100 million a year to give it data on American telephone calls and other telephone calls. Well, that's a gross violation of the Fourth Amendment.
But by paying for it, are they in essence bypassing the Constitution because it's a commercial transaction? I'm trying to find out what their loophole.
No, it's like, Willie Sutton. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. They're asking where the data is. AT&T has it. Now, when AT&T is cooperating hand in glove with the U.S. government to collect data on U.S. citizens, you have the government, you have the media, which is disguising all this. You have Congress in the person of Dianne Feinstein in the Senate, Mike Rogers in the House, complicit in it. And you have the beginnings of not only turnkey tyranny, what Edward Snowden said, but you have the beginning of, don't blanch at the word, fascism. Look at how Mussolini defined fascism. It's when the corporations, the media, the national security apparatus, the military, and the legislators all are enmeshed in this incestuous relationship. Why? Well, a lot of it.
So you're declaring America is now, in your mind, officially a fascist state.
I didn't say that. I'm saying we have incipient fascism at work here. And what I've appealed to the Europeans to do is, look, you acquiesced in the United States, prompting you to favor and approve kidnapping, enhanced interrogation techniques, otherwise known as torture, and actually black prisons where that was going on European soil. Is there no limits to what you will tolerate? Is there no limits to your supine attitude toward the United States of America? Now is the time. Now you see the lengths to which this goes. If you don't help us now, as we helped you, as my father's generation drove out fascism from Europe, if you don't tell us what to like, because we have no historic appreciation of what fascism is like. You do, okay? You're dying off, but there are enough of you to tell us, look, this is what it looks like. This is what I was in Amsterdam in early August, okay? And my Dutch friends were reminding me that when the Nazis came into the Netherlands, the first thing they looked for were the lists of citizens in these dwarfs, in these towns, in these cities. There were extensive lists. They were kept meticulously, and they had columns race. They had columns religion. Now, the Dutch with guts burned those records before the tanks came in. The Dutch that decided to cooperate with the invaders gave them to the Nazis, and those Jews in those places were summarily, easily identified, taken off to Eastern Europe, and you know what happened to them. That's what lists do, okay? And when you see AT&T getting paid $100 million by the CIA every year to surrender these lists, why? Because that's where the data is, and elsewhere, then you have the beginnings. You have the beginnings of fascism.
Are you saying that, based on the parallels of history, that America is on the edge of its own American Holocaust?
I'm not saying Holocaust. That's even a more emotionally charged word. What I'm saying is that I took a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So did Ed Snowden. Now, the people who crafted that Constitution and the Bill of Rights came from a fascist kind of ambiance where, for example, British colonial authorities could go into your house at any time, confiscate any of your materials, do anything they wanted to you in violation of what became the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment guarantees Americans to be safe from what they call unreasonable searches and seizures. And no warrant shall issue, it says, except upon probable cause defining the particulars of the place to be searched or the person or things to be seized. That's the language of the amendment. There is no way, unless you say that there's probable cause to say you, Gary, and I are terrorists or that we've committed a crime. There's no way to square what NSA has been doing with the Fourth Amendment. And I'm pledged to defend. There's no expiration date on an oath to defend the Constitution. I took that oath. So did Edward Snowden. Yes, he's a remarkable man. He's a guy that took that seriously. And now we're all the beneficiaries of his enlightening us as to how close we are to a fascist state.
Ray, I want to bring you back on the program at a later date. I wanted to get into that topic of CNN, and you had mentioned how they had cut you off in the middle of some of your interviews. So we'll have to save that for another interview. Thanks for joining us today on WHDT World News.
You're most welcome, Gary.
All right, that was Ray McGovern right here on WHDT World News. Stay tuned. We have the rest of today's headlines, all of the news from Hollywood, California, and a full report on the weather coming up. Don't touch that dial.